I'd gone to a couple AA meetings. It was not for me, and I didn't love the label of alcoholic. But in 2017, I stumbled on a treatment that's been around for 30 years. It seemed too good to be true. I started it in July of 2017, and it just changed my life.
Katie, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I always see you on TikTok. We're kind of fellow TikTok sisters doing the thing. Would you do the honors and introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about why you do it.
Yes, I know. I follow you on TikTok too, and I reached out to you like a month ago. I'm like, we are like kind of speaking the same language, so I would love to get to know you more. And you invited me on, so I'm very grateful to be here. Yeah, I struggled, long story short, with my drinking for 10 years, basically the entire decade of my 20s. I'm 38 now, and was really in a place of drinking every day, binge drinking every day, drinking on the weekends. And throughout that time, even though I was drinking a lot, I really didn't like that. I wanted to get control. I wanted to moderate. I even tried quitting drinking, honestly, like probably dozens of times over the course of that decade. And it just never stuck. Like I would always relapse and binge again. So my own personal struggle just led me to researching, alternatives to like treatments we all know, like AA and rehab and things like that. I'd gone to a couple AA meetings. It was not for me, and I didn't love the label of alcoholic, and but was still struggling. But in 2017, I stumbled on a treatment that's been around for 30 years. I know you're familiar with it, that uses a medicine to essentially help the brain unlearn excessive drinking patterns. It's called the Sinclair Method. Stumbled on it in 2017. It seemed too good to be true, but I was kind of hopeless. So I was like, well, I've got to give this a try. And I started it in July of 2017, and it just changed my life. It changed my drinking, and it changed my life. As I drink less, it just impacted everything. And so as I started to see success with the treatment, I was like, I've got to tell people about this because there's nobody out there talking about it. I was diving in, trying to find others who'd done it, and I couldn't find anything. So I started documenting my journey through the protocol and just giving updates on YouTube and videos and stuff. And then that kind of naturally progressed into me coaching other people through it, doing group calls and things like that. And now I run a program that supports people through the treatment protocol through an online private platform.
What I really am curious about is kind of separating the drug that is naltrexone, which I think is what your protocol is based on, from what you're talking about, the treatment. I tried naltrexone for a hot minute. I didn't get good results in it. Of course, I was doing it in secret. To be full disclosure, my husband was a doctor, and I got him to prescribe it for me. And I saw somebody's TED talk on it, and they said you don't have to stop drinking to do it. And so I tried it. My personal experience was it kind of just made me tired and depressed more. And I've had another expert on here that said it's not for everybody. I also didn't do anything to support it. I was still hiding in shame and hoping that just by swallowing a pill, all of my problems would go away. I would swallow anything. And so I didn't give it a fair shot, to be honest. But can you distinguish between the drug and how the drug is not the whole Sinclair method?
Yeah, that's such an important distinction because I encounter people like you probably almost every day. They're like, I tried it, I felt like crap, or it didn't work. Like, what's the big deal about it? I learned about it through that same TEDx talk you're talking about. And so, yeah, there is a significant difference in just like getting naltrexone and taking it versus what we now use alongside the Sinclair method, which is a real comprehensive treatment that combines like the biopsychosocial support that should go along with alcohol recovery for optimal success. Naltrexone, long story short, it's a medication that's been approved by the FDA for alcohol addiction treatment since 1994. And it's used in different ways for treating alcohol addiction. Some people take it daily and it helps them stay sober because it can serve as an anti-craving medication. I hear mixed results from people on that, but I do hear from people who that works well for. It keeps them sober. And then the Sinclair Method protocol is different because, and by the way, it's called the Sinclair Method, named after the researcher who discovered it in the 90s, Dr. David Sinclair. That protocol is unique with naltrexone because it involves taking naltrexone before drinking, typically like an hour before at least. And when the medicine is taken before drinking, what his research showed and what's shown in practice over the last 3 decades is that when naltrexone is paired with the alcohol, the naltrexone is an opiate antagonist or blocker. And so it's blocking the rewarding or endorphin effects related to alcohol. When we drink, it just floods our brain with a bunch of feel good hormones. And that's why it's addictive. It just feels really good on a very practical level. And so when we take naltrexone beforehand and it blunts or mutes that reward, what happens is over time, the brain can gradually unlearn alcohol use disorder because the brain isn't getting the same reward from the behavior. And so when someone drinks repeatedly with the medicine, it typically takes like 6 to 12 months to see full results, meaning getting to a place where they just feel like they have total control over drinking again, whether they're drinking in moderation or going alcohol free. Over that time, the brain is gradually unlearning alcohol as this primary reward. And then, like what we do in our program is help people meet the medicine halfway with gradual habit change, creating new rituals, questioning beliefs about alcohol, practicing different coping skills and things like that. Because if someone just, and I've seen this so many times over the years, they just pop the pill. And I honestly thought this, I was like, cool, this medicine's like going to be the thing to fix my drinking. And they pop the pill and kick back for it, waiting for it to do all the work. And they're surprised when they hit like a plateau and they tell me, I don't feel like drinking because the naltrexone is working, but I'm drinking anyway. Like, why is that happening? And that's like the importance of meeting it halfway and recognizing the medication is a powerful tool, but it's just a tool that goes alongside, changing your relationship with alcohol at the core. And I know you talk a lot about that.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that people, if they are self-reporting that they're taking the pill and it maybe worked for a little while, but they hit a plateau and now they're just kind of drinking through it. That was my favorite line, by the way. I'm like, I'm just going to drink through this. It's fine. So they're kind of drinking through it. So
Yeah.
that is then where the medicine's done all it can. And that's a sign that it's not necessarily that the medicine isn't right for them, although maybe it is, but it's a sign that the work they need to do is deeper.
Yeah, and it's not that the medicine, like, okay, 3 months in, you hit a plateau, like the medicine isn't going to do anything for you anymore. In fact, in my experience, the longer someone's on it, the better it works. But if they are not engaged in, like I said, like meeting it halfway, where they, first of all, they have a desire to change their drinking. Like I'm sure you've worked with people where on one hand, they want to change their drinking, but on the other hand, they love that bottle of wine every night. And so it's like, okay, well, what's this belief that's driving the behavior, the habitual drinking? Because if you're on naltrexone and you still have a burning desire to drink a bottle of wine every night, like it's pretty easy to outdrink the medicine. So we
Okay.
help people work with the mindset, getting them in a place where they feel ready to make change. And it's done so very gradually, but it does require tracking your drinks and mindful drinking and viewing this process as a treatment. Like you're not just drinking as usual, you're drinking in order to retrain your brain and ultimately become more of a normal drinker, so to speak. But the medication does continue to work, but oftentimes people will hit a plateau, like because I kind of believe there's like two extinctions going on. Like you're extinguishing the neurobiology aspect of the addiction, which the medication helps with, but then there's the habitual behavior side as well, and that sometimes takes longer to catch up.
Okay. So it sounds like the medication supports, but it doesn't cure. Like you're your own cure. And I love what you said about the time length of 6 to 12 months, which I've never heard associated with naltrexone before. But I know in the work that I do, I don't offer any medication, but we're
Yeah.
going to get emotionally sober, addressing the beliefs and the habits and all of that. And it takes 6 to 12 months to even kind of rewire your brain. Like the myelination of the neural synapses, like the cement that paves the circuit through your brain, doesn't even start to become a biological reality that might support a new habit for 6 to 12 months. So I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I get messages all the time from people who they go to their doctor, they ask for naltrexone, and they're like, I've been on it for 2 weeks and nothing's changing, or 2 months and nothing's changing.
Yeah. I took it for like 3 days and it didn't work.
Okay.
I mean, let's
Okay.
be honest, it didn't work. It's like 3 whole days in a row. So
Yeah.
there's you
Yeah.
go.
It really needs time because, like, especially I work with people, they've been drinking every day for 10, 20, 30 years. Like that's an extremely ingrained habit. There's a set of beliefs and behaviors and mindset and just identity, how we view ourselves and our relationship with with alcohol. There's so much that needs to be unpacked and changed. And I personally loved that this treatment was gradual. Like, I know when we seek out support for alcohol problems, we like want the problem gone yesterday. But I find that like when we make, and if you read any habit change book, it says the same thing. Like if you're making gradual, sustainable changes, that's what's going to promote long-term success. Just like we know, like a crash diet, often you might lose the weight quickly, but you're going to gain it right back. I feel that's true for alcohol as well. It's like often such a, we're so attached to it in so many ways in our life. And so it's this gradual decoupling of, alcohol's role in our life and us deciding like what role do we want it to play. I mean, I love your work because you kind of put the power back in the hands of the people. Like you're not a victim, you're not an alcoholic, you're not stuck. You can get out of this. Like, it's going to be a process, but you're not permanently stuck there. And I love that.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest hurdles, I just know from myself when I was drinking every day, it was such a core part of my identity. I didn't understand what I know now, which is it is a mindset. Like it is how you're seeing. And I know the obstacles, like whether you hit the plateau or it doesn't seem to work, the obstacle is believing that you can get through it, that that's part of the process, that nothing has gone wrong. Can you speak to a little bit about how you and the Sinclair method itself deal with those beliefs and help people move through the messy, nonlinear process of change?
Yes, that's a very good question. I call that like the messy middle of the Sinclair method, where so typically when people start on naltrexone following the Sinclair method, kind of the first month is just like, okay, just start the medicine. That's a pretty significant change. I mean, like you had some side effects. So like work with your doctor to make sure the dosing is right so you can acclimate to it and minimize or avoid side effects. Typically they go away. But the first month is like just getting used to taking the medication and making sure that you're taking it correctly, because without that, it's just going to prolong the process. Like consistency with adherence to the medication is crucial. So that's kind of month one. And typically what happens during that time is people start to get some space from the alcohol. That's how they often describe it. Like that insane urge and craving has just quieted down a bit to where they can start to distance themselves a bit from the alcohol. And maybe they'll have an urge to drink, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I got to get home and open up that bottle of wine. It's like, do I really want to drink? Or why do I want to drink right now? What's the need underneath that urge to drink? And so really through this process, it is definitely starting to uncover and question those beliefs that many people are carrying around, perhaps on an unconscious level, even like, I need a drink to relax. I have 5 kids and my life is busy and he's the only like treat I have at the end of the day. And that may be like true right now and feel very real, but let's get underneath that and really understand like, what the need is underneath your urge to, check out with a bottle of wine or whatever. So with naltrexone, it starts to give that space. And that's where we gradually come into, become more aware of, first of all, those beliefs, start to be curious about them and question them, and then incorporate in mindful drinking around that. If someone's typically drinking a bottle of wine at night when they start, maybe they're still drinking that when they start, but it's like, okay, how can we start tracking that and slowing you down a bit and, incorporating in water beforehand or meal beforehand, and just starting to add in habits that will be helpful on the path of becoming more of a moderate drinker, and then changing the habits like drinking on an empty stomach that is not helpful for being a normal moderate drinker. So it's a gradual process of uncovering those beliefs that most times people don't even know that they have, learning to drink more mindfully with awareness, learning to meet those needs they have around alcohol in new ways, cultivating different coping skills, seeking out meaning in life. I don't know if you, Colleen, had like for me, I was a daily drinker for 10 years. So alcohol was like my purpose. I'm not even joking. I didn't have hobbies outside of drinking really. And when I was on this treatment, I was like, what do I even like to do? Like, I'm a drinker. I don't know what else I like to do. So I had to really learn hobbies and find other ways to spend my time. And to your point and what we were talking about, that's why this takes time. We're kind of, uncovering this version of ourselves that maybe has been buried in our alcohol use issues for years or decades. But in my experience, it's a very gentle process, and you're kind of working with the medicine as it's helping the brain unlearn the disorder, kind of get rid of the craving, give you more control. You have that space to do the other work to ultimately see success with the protocol.
Okay, so when I see people, sometimes people comment on my posts, the Sinclair method worked for me, which
Mhm.
in my brain, I associate Sinclair and naltrexone. And this is
Mhm.
like the first time I'm kind of seeing, that naltrexone is part of the Sinclair method. But if somebody says, the Sinclair method worked for me, what does that look like? What are they signing up for? Is it just the medication and then you can read some stuff? Is there coaching and community? I mean, obviously you coach. Is this a
Yeah.
lifelong thing? You mentioned tracking, and
Mhm.
is that something you're tracking for the rest of your life? What is the timeline that you're moving through that you can expect if you do the work and you stay consistent, you do all the things, then this is what the result will be?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to be honest, everyone's different. So everyone responds differently. They come to the treatment with different drinking patterns. For example, there's people that are drinking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but they're binging, but they're alcohol free the rest of the week. And then there's people like me who they're just drinking every single day. And then, of course, people in between that are on either end of it. So typically, when someone's saying that the Sinclair method works for them, what that means is that they, first of all, yes, they got on naltrexone and they were compliant or adherent with taking the medication correctly 100% of the time. One of the doctors we work with says 99% compliance with the medication will give you 0% results. Like, it really is that important because it's about consistently reinforcing that alcohol is not that same level of reward. Intermittently give your brain that reward and you're not taking it, then it just confuses the brain. It can enhance the craving again for alcohol and just set people back. So step one is they're following the medication protocol consistently. And then typically what's needed for most people, I will say, like, probably about 20 to 30% of people start this treatment and they see success within like 3 months. Like, they've already been doing the moderate drinking work. They're already, taking classes, reading books. They've made a lot of progress with their drinking, but it's still out of control. And naltrexone is like the missing piece that just does it for them. The majority of other people that I work with, success with the protocol, as I mentioned, it takes time and it takes, like what I say, which is meeting the medicine halfway. So not only are they drinking on the medication when they are drinking, they're also working toward planning regular alcohol-free days and ideally building up more and more of those over time. And they're intentional with those days where they're not just, forcing them and just saying, I'm just not going to drink today. It's like, how can I go out and do something fun and rewarding and nourishing for my soul so that I can teach my brain that alcohol is not the only pleasure anymore? So they're working on building up alcohol-free days. They're working on drinking more mindfully. Many of us, when we're stuck in the habit of drinking, we crack open that bottle of wine and turn on Netflix and just pour and drink until we pass out, essentially. And so it's bringing that unconscious pattern or habit to the forefront and just becoming more aware of it. Like, why am I pouring that third drink? Do I really want it? Or is this just the habit playing out? Another thing is they're cultivating different coping skills. A lot of us lean on alcohol to cope. That was one of the harder things for me on the treatment, where there would be days I didn't really feel like drinking, but I had a crappy day and I was just habituated to leaning on wine for that. So I was like, I don't really want to drink, but here I am taking naltrexone and drinking because I don't know what else to do. So it's this process of learning other coping skills as well and cultivating a life that has meaning apart from the alcohol. So it's this process that evolves over time. The medication is helping to give the brain space, but people succeed with the treatment when they're incorporating in these other components of it to really help rebuild a life apart from alcohol and become, I mean, you mentioned the identity piece, like become someone who truly is a normal drinker. I remember a question I often asked myself on the treatment is, what would a normal drinker do right now? And that just simple question helped inform my decisions, like day to day. Well, they probably wouldn't drink on an empty stomach. They wouldn't drink when they're upset. They'd probably go for a walk, just things like that as we gradually change our thought habits and behavioral habits as well around drinking. And then with this treatment, just to kind of wrap it up with, like, what does long-term success look like? So the individual decides what role they want alcohol to play in their life. Most people who go on the Sinclair method have a goal to drink moderately or be a normal drinker and have the option to drink if they want to. And within about a year, most people get there. Some people quicker, some people it takes them 2 or 3 years, but they're continuing to progress throughout that time. And then other people, like what happened to me, is I went on the treatment to be a moderate drinker, but after a year on the protocol, I ended up quitting drinking just because I was like, I don't care about alcohol anymore. It had no appeal anymore. And so I sort of quit drinking by accident. But if I wanted to drink again tomorrow, I would just take naltrexone beforehand. And that's the key for the protocol. If someone continues to drink, they will continue to take naltrexone 1 hour before drinking, because once the addiction is unlearned, it just prevents the brain from relearning it again.
Okay. So it's not something where you are advised to go off the medication. Like basically for the rest of your life, if you're drinking, you're using naltrexone to support the process.
Typically, yes. And I've been in this space since 2017, and I've known probably less than 5 people personally who were able to return to moderate drinking without the medicine and did so successfully. Typically, those people have done a lot of that inner work to heal. They have guardrails around their drinking, they're not leaning on it to cope and things like that. Oftentimes, what does happen is if someone stops the medicine, even if they feel like they're completely healed and back in control, they can relearn the alcohol use disorder in a matter of a couple of months. So it is imperative. Like if I were to drink again, I would just, as a protection, take naltrexone because I don't want to play with fire again in that
So
way.
is that something where almost like carrying an EpiPen, as a non-drinker, you're not planning to drink, but do you carry an EpiPen in your bag so that if you would change your mind that you could do so in a way that felt safe to you?
Yeah, I mean, I keep naltrexone on hand. I used to have a keychain pill holder, and like a couple years after the treatment, I kept that on my keyring. But now I'm almost 7 years without drinking, and I just have no urge, so I don't keep it with me anymore. But that is what people do. They'll have a couple tablets on hand, and they'll plan to take the medicine if they have a desire to drink.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit more about your community. Like, how often do you meet? What is it like to be in your community for Sinclair Method?
Yeah, so it's an online community that is really specialized and centered around the specific Sinclair Method protocol. So people who are using naltrexone specifically to drink less alcohol. And it really offers everything somebody would need for the Sinclair Method protocol, no matter what stage they're at. We have people who start the program who are brand new, they've never heard of the treatment before. And then we have people who've been on it for a year, but they've been just taking the medication and not doing anything else, and they need guidance and support. So the community is pretty active. All of our coaches have done the method themselves and are certified to coach others through it. We have therapists that come in and lead workshops on healing and trauma and mindset and habit change and things like that. We also have group coaching where people connect multiple times a week just with other members and coaches or the therapists on live groups, and then one-on-one coaching as well. And then in addition to all of like the coaching support, there's also video courses and articles and lessons that really walk people through. We kind of break the treatment down into 3 phases. So it walks people through like beginning it, and then the middle phase, which is the behavioral habit change, and then toward the end, like what does it mean to, I mean, the end goal of this treatment is called extinction of the addiction. What does that mean? What does that look like? Kind of defining alcohol's role in your life.
And is all of this what was created by Dr. Sinclair himself, or have you evolved over time?
It's evolved. So Dr. Sinclair's protocol was really about taking naltrexone on your drinking days to block the reward reinforcement from alcohol, and then being intentional with your alcohol-free days so you can teach your brain other rewards and coping skills. But he kind of stopped there. That was really his research. And then just in practice over the years, kind of organically coaching people and working with people, seeing what's necessary to really succeed with the protocol. One of our medical advisor at Thrive, his name's Dr. Volpicelli, and he's been researching naltrexone for 40 years. He actually worked with Dr. Sinclair. He's not only an addiction specialist, but also a psychologist. And so he has really approached it with the psychosocial behavioral side of it. So like there's a book about the Sinclair method that kind of dives into the science behind it, but there's no information in there around like habit change, behavior change, mindset, things like that.
So it sounds like you've got a holistic approach that is supported by the medication.
Yeah, that's yeah, pretty much how
Yeah.
it works.
So where does your community access naltrexone? Is that something you prescribe or your medical person prescribes?
Yeah, so we actually have partnered with online doctors in all 50 states. It's when I started on the medication in 2017, I had a really hard time getting a prescription. I went to 5 different doctors in my area and they all said no, which was really shocking to me. But I've since learned that most general doctors just don't know about it. And a lot of them aren't willing to prescribe it, even though technically any doctor can. But that's why we refer people out to online doctors that specialize in the treatment. So we have a whole network we work with. And then probably about half the people in our program, they learn about naltrexone one way or another, get it from their doctor, but then either their doctor refers them to us or they join just because they need more specific guidance. But if someone's listening and they're struggling to get naltrexone or their doctor won't prescribe it, there's other options. Just reach out or, yeah, let me know if we can help with that.
Are there other Sinclair programs out there? I know with what I do, I kind of feel like I'm in a blue ocean all by myself. I get slammed on social media all the time. And, then I see you over there and you're one of the few people well, you're the only other person I know, to be honest, that is not all sobriety and zero tolerance abstinence approach and all of that. Are there more of us is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I tell people, I'm like, I feel like the Sinclair Method is the redheaded stepchild of alcohol recovery. And maybe you feel that way about your work too, because I've seen some of the videos you've made where people are just like beating you down and telling you you're going to murder somebody with this
Yes,
information or something.
yes, yes.
Are there more people out there? I mean, Molly Watts, I mentioned her, the
I
alcohol
love her.
minimalist. Yeah,
Yeah.
she does like
There's
a lot of
three of
minds.
us.
Yeah, there's 3 of us. She does a lot of mindset work around it, but it's so rare. And there are other programs that use naltrexone, but oftentimes they'll just provide naltrexone and not much else, or they don't really specialize in the Sinclair Method protocol. So as far as I know, there's not other like Sinclair Method specific online programs. There's free communities on Reddit and stuff like that. But yeah, it really is like this dogmatic view in the space, I think, still. Even people who've branched out from AA and aren't really promoting AA, it's just very black and white. And for me, that never felt sustainable. I was like not drinking for the rest of my life. Even though I don't drink now, I'm like, I can drink tomorrow if I want to. And it almost makes it easier not to drink. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you don't see other people in the space either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't. And I think that it is so important that more of us raise our hands, especially since like post COVID, so many people who were normal drinkers went into lockdown and did not come out normal drinkers. And there just isn't enough information out there that you do have options. Well, Katie, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share?
I think just to say that, sometimes people reach out to me and they're like, is my drinking bad enough for the Sinclair Method or is it too bad for it? And I would just say, in my experience, I've seen this method work for the spectrum of alcohol use disorder, whether mild to severe. And what I really love about this treatment is that, like, in traditional treatments, people are kind of waiting for that rock bottom moment. Like, well, maybe if my life gets bad enough, then I'll be motivated to change. And in my experience, the rock bottoms just kept getting lower and the motivation still wouldn't come. So just to encourage people that whether it's through what you do or through what we do or something else out there, like, you don't have to wait for a rock bottom. You can address it now. You don't have to identify as an alcoholic. I kind of feel like excessive drinking, like what you said post COVID, it's like a learned pattern and a learned habit. You can unlearn it and you can reverse it and you're not stuck there forever, even though traditional treatment kind of wants you to believe that you're not. And you don't have to wait for it to get really bad because you don't have to quit. There are ways to, rein it in. And I think a lot of what I've learned over the years, and maybe you as well, it's like our alcohol use disorder issues. It's really a neurological issue. It's something in the brain and how we're thinking about alcohol and how we're viewing it and the habits we have around it. And thanks to what we know about neuroplasticity, like, it can change. Your brain isn't stuck that way forever. So for people just to know, like, you can get help now. You don't have to be an alcoholic or call yourself an alcoholic. You can just address the issue before it gets really bad. And if you are in a bad place, like, there are options. Like, keep doing research and finding the one that works for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for being here. I appreciate your time. And I will put all your information in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It was a real treat to meet you, Colleen.
Same, Katie.
Thank you.